question. Home and car buying, what I wasn't taught in high school. Special guest, real estate agent Efrem Abdullah, as well as personal finance expert Shani Curry. Shani, you were making some comments. I'm sorry I asked you a question, but I want to let you finish up and continue, and give out these pieces of advice that people can hopefully get beyond just the knowledge, but they're able to process it and figure out how to use them in the process, because that is the mental dialogue, the step that you have to take to make knowledge available and usable. That's when it is applied power, if you will. Go ahead, Queen.
So the other side is, I remember when the first property that I looked at was obviously the first property that I bought, and I think the biggest part of it is, who your circle of influence is made up of, because obviously when I graduated from college, all of my friends were buying, status symbols to share with the world that obviously, we graduated, when in fact, they had loaded up on a bunch of debt. So now you go and get a new car to let everybody know that you can afford to get even more debt, which is very, very, very interesting, right? I can get more debt. I got student loan debt and I get more debt. So I skipped that process, and because of who my circle of influence is with, so just listening to the show as a point is always going to be a place to just generate the thoughts in which you strongly advocate for, which I'm a strong advocate for, because those thoughts are going to, stay with you and begin to influence you throughout all of your processes. So my circle of influence at that time were real estate investors. So that wasn't the first time. The property that I purchased was not the property that I got. I also, when I was purchasing that property, because I bought a car while I was in college and I paid it off by the time I got out of college, but that was the only thing that I had gotten. My mother was very, very rigid when it came to me picking up any type of credit card debt. So I literally didn't have any credit at all. These are all things that I learned, in the process, right? I didn't know as much as I needed to know, no matter how many real estate friends and buddies and investors that I hung out with, they still didn't know my personal money scenario. They couldn't plug me into anything until we started plugging in prices and things like that. So I didn't have any credit because I didn't get any credit cards when I was in college. My mom was adamant about it. So now you want to jump from, this $15,000 car that I had paid off versus now I want to purchase a property for $180,000 at that particular time, and no one, they didn't want to take a risk on me because the only thing they knew about me was that I can pay off that $15,000. So at that time, I was living in an apartment. Living in an apartment, and I was working for the Lexus dealership at that particular time. Speaking of which, going back into this time, so I was making a decent amount of money. So it wasn't an issue in terms of money. It was like total credit. So I learned that in 6 months. So I learned that, when I went and applied, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and get out of this apartment. My rent at that time might have been $1,800 to $1,900. I'm like, I'm going to get out of this, and I'm going to go back and move back home with my parents. I moved back home with my parents. I stopped spending the amount of money that I was spending on rent. I took that amount of money and I just started saving it. Whatever it is that I needed to do, one of the key things that I did was my grandfather, I told him to add me to his credit card. So he added me to his credit card. My grandfather had tons of credit card history that I myself did not have, but through his good credit having self, I was able to absorb some of his good credit by attaching myself as an authorized user. When I did that, I was able to start getting, access to more credit just because of that particular association. So sometimes maybe your parents doesn't necessarily, drop down on the down payment, but through association to their credit will give you the opportunity to kind of leverage that particular relationship, which is essentially what it is that I did. So at first I was told, no, you don't have enough credit. You don't have any of these things like that.